Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this new learning series, Designing Financial Inclusion from the Ground Up. As you enter, please feel free to share your name and the place you're calling in from. A couple of housekeeping notes before we jump in. Please, if you can, keep your microphone muted. And please also note that this session will be recorded and then all the materials will be made available later on Spark Blue. As the conversation kicks off, don't feel very free to react, to share your insights, to ask questions in the chat throughout. And if you have questions, they will be answered in the Q&A. So thank you again for joining and a warm welcome to all of you to discuss how UNDP is innovating in the space of digital financial inclusion, with a focus, at least for this session, on the work of the Accelerator Labs. So to help us explore this topic, we have two colleagues from the labs, Roslyn from the Accelerator Lab in Zambia, who will be talking about the research work that she did alongside colleagues in Cameroon and South Sudan, looking at gaps and opportunities for digital wallets, mobile money. And then we will have Tong from the Accelerator Lab in South Sudan sharing the work that his team did on Sanduks, which are community savings and lending groups, and the way in which that economic or financial activity served as the basis for a scalable product that was created, scalable digital product that was created by the first mobile money company in the country. And as I mentioned, we will round this discussion off with a Q&A. So just to give a little bit of context to start for those of you who may be a little bit less familiar with the Accelerator Labs, it is a global network of what you might describe as social innovation hubs, staffed by social innovation experts in more than 100 countries around the globe. The labs have received some level of public recognition and study by what I'd like to consider reputable organizations. But it's important to note that the labs we consider collective intelligence our North Star. And so the basic idea is that when people interact, it kind of extends the capacity for information processing and learning. And this rests within the idea that people who are closest to the problem are most likely to have solutions to that problem, which is why UNDP invested in this global network. So when it comes to digital financial inclusion specifically, so what's interesting about the labs is that they kind of follow their own curiosities. There is no top-down mandate suggesting to them what topic they should focus on. But despite that lack of explicit orchestration, we realized or discovered that there are more than, there were approximately 20 labs working in doing finance work with a focus on inclusion that was delivered or supported through digital tools. So as we continue to explore the work that labs were doing, we tried to make sense of it. The first attempt being a DFI toolkit, which contains many case studies illustrating how labs help people in communities understand how to use digital financial services, and then also help them engage in financial behavior. So helping them save, pay, borrow, de-risk through insurance, and then also certify economic activity through technology like blockchain. So as we continue to explore this topic, particularly in a 3-day workshop that we hosted in Nairobi last year, we developed what we describe as an R&D agenda. This R&D agenda has two parts, the theory of change and then a set of learning questions. The theory of change is relatively straightforward. It basically asserts that digital financial inclusion can contribute to economic development by pursuing three opportunities. The first is unlocking the latent value of networks and collectives, and we'll hear a little bit more about that from Tong as he describes the work with Sandux. Also creating new value through technology. So if you think about a project in Tanzania working with informal waste pickers, whereby they received tokened credit or tokenized credit for the waste that they picked, that unlocked access to insurance, and similarly, new sources of income. And we'll hear a little bit about that from Rosaline as she describes the opportunities for the opportunities that digital wallets create for small business owners, the capital that comes through those wallets. And so the second part, as I mentioned, of the DFI R&D agenda is the questions. And we tend to prefer questions because they are largely generative, and they help point us in the direction of areas that might be really productive to explore. So each of the questions is described in more detail in the R&D agenda document alongside the opportunities that I described in the previous slide. And I can drop the link to the R&D agenda in the chat. So at this point, it would be really great to hear from you. I will share a poll that will ask you to look at or to consider DFI-related challenges and give us some feedback on the degree to which these challenges relate to your work. So I will give you a couple of minutes to fill out that poll, and I will play some music. Hopefully everyone can see the poll. I think people are participating, so I'll assume the poll is live, and I'll just give it a couple of minutes and play some music. About 60%. These are coming along well. Over 30 to 40 something. That's what we recommend. Yeah, I'll give it another week. So second week girl. I'll be trying to put a little bit stuff there, so it's just everyone who's so anticipated. Let's see what we've got here. Okay. So, sorry, I'm having a little bit of a technical difficulty here. Okay, so judging from the poll, it seems like we have most people their work seems to be related to new financial services unlocked by digital technologies, which is really interesting. So for those of you who have commented this, please feel free to talk about or to put in the chat which financial services and which digital technologies. Next, we have understanding data empowerment in the context of digital financial services, which is interesting. So I'd be curious to understand how you've basically fostered data empowerment using what methods. And then we have a three-way tie, which is interesting, alternative data sources to improve credit assessment, exploring minimum ecosystem conditions for digital financial services rollout, and digital wallets as catalysts for the access to other financial services, which conveniently, oh, I'm sorry, I hadn't ended the poll, and so you probably couldn't see the results. So let me just run that down again quickly. Apologies for the misstep on my side. So again, the first one we have with the most respondents is the new financial services unlocked by digital technologies, and then data empowerment and a three-way tie between alternative data sources, exploring minimum conditions, and digital wallets. The last one is particularly convenient because we have our speaker, Rosaline, who can talk about what she learned with colleagues in and around this topic. So I will stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Rosaline to take us through her work. Over to you, Rosaline.
Thank you, Tayo. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. I will be making a presentation on the research that we did that was looking at digitizing the savings that the cross-border traders were using in Zambia. So this is an overview of my presentation. I'll just do the introduction of what we did, what the pilot was all about. I'll also just talk briefly about what kind of methods and tools we used in the pilot, and briefly some findings. I'll also highlight the challenges and conclude with some recommendations that we were able to come up with. So this pilot was a project that we were implementing between the Accelerator Lab Zambia and Accelerator Lab Zimbabwe. So it was a joint program under the Africa Borderland Center. So it's covered a wide range of issues other than financial inclusion. So there was issues to do with trade, issues to do with financing, issues to do with livelihoods and stuff like that. But for this kind of presentation, I will specifically focus on the topic of the day, which is financial inclusion. And basically what we wanted to find out was, is there an improvement in the financial operating environment for the cross-border traders if we provide them with digital platforms and the use of mobile money platforms? And also, was there an increase in access to financial products through the digital loan management and real-time tracking of their savings and income? So how did we arrive at choosing our target audience? We basically had, prior to the pilot, we had a scoping study, which was done in conjunction with UNDP Zambia and UNCDF, where we did a scoping study to see what was the impact of COVID-19 on the cross-border traders due to the border closures and restrictions that followed after COVID. And then also there was, if you remember, there was the requirement for people to have COVID certificates for you to travel. And, those COVID certificates were quite expensive, especially for the cross-border traders, because they were costing, in Zambia, they were costing between $55 and $80. So for someone to move, to go into Zimbabwe, they do that much, and coming back, they do another one. It was something that was restrictive on the traders. And as a result, most of them, they couldn't do their business. And they also stopped doing the village banking activities, which was the source of capital for their small businesses, as they could, not afford to go to the formal banks to go and get loans, because the banks would require collateral, which they didn't have. So after getting that kind of information, that background information, we then had to do a lot of work with the communities. We used different tools and methods to engage. We had to do ethnographic research, where we had to scope and just understand what it is that the traders were going through, what are some of the platforms they were using for digital purposes, and what their understanding of financial products and trade and other things that was part of the pilot. We also had to do a lot of focus group discussions to co-create the pilot, because we wanted to ensure that there was ownership for the pilot by the cross-border traders. Then we also did key informant interviews, where we had to get information from the immigration, the customs, the revenue authority, and other institutions that deal with the cross-border traders. And we also had to do a lot of partnership building through stakeholder workshops. And then we also had to disseminate results through those workshops as well. In addition, we had to raise awareness on the pilot so that people could, be conversant with what we were doing, and then also get their buy-in into the project. And as we were doing the implementation, we realized that there was need for financial and digital literacy. So we had to factor in the training workshops for the pilot participants to do financial and digital literacy. And then, of course, we had to do the actual pilot, where we had to enroll the cross-border traders and have them experience the use of a digital platform called the Village Savers app. So the way the village banking operates is where you have groups, come together and pool their resources. And then once they have what they have for that particular day, then some people would borrow. And then those that borrowed the last time would have to pay back. And then they will have to do the reconciliation manually and stuff like that. So if there is money left over, they put it in the box, and the treasurer goes back with the money at home. So in specific instances, you would find that somebody would run away with the money, and some people have lost money in groups like that. So what we did was then to bring the Village Savers app to the groups. And the Village Savers app was developed by a company called Village Savers Technology Limited. This is an innovator that we surfaced during another process that we do at Accelerator Lab Zambia. It's called the National Innovation Initiative. So through that process, we identified Village Savers technology to have that particular innovation. So we got Village Savers technologies to go and pilot the use of their innovation with what this app was solving was mainly to resolve the issues of poor record keeping. They were resolving issues of human error. They were bringing transparency to the process. They were also trying to avert the fear that people have of wanting to use digital platforms because they are afraid of being scammed. So with the Village Savers app, they were able to see the different transactions in real time, and they were able to follow what was going on, who's paying, when the payment is due, how much has been saved, how much has been borrowed, and stuff like that. So this allowed the community members to continue doing the village banking during the time of lockdown. But then after the lockdown, they were able to then do these meetings without physically having the meetings, but they could have the meetings on a WhatsApp group. And they do the transactions using the mobile money platforms. So from the surveys that we did, we had, initially we had 87 participants that enrolled on the projects, on the pilot. But at the time that we were ending the pilot, there were 75 people. So basically there were 75 people that participated fully in the pilot. And out of those, 82% were women, and then we had 37% youths, and we had 14% of participants being disabled. And also we ensured that the people that enrolled on the pilot had access to the phone, and then that the phone was able to access the app itself, but then also they should be on the WhatsApp group because that was the main communication channel that they were using when they're doing meetings, which are not physical meetings. So what did we discover? Some of the findings were that the use of the Village Savers app, increased the trust amongst the members themselves. So they were able to then increase the savings that they were able to do. So at baseline, they reported that they had the highest that they were able to save was equivalent to $110. But after we did the pilot, for the 6-month period of the pilot, they were able to save up to $3,520. So you can see the increase in the amount of saving that they were able to do. And because they were able to save a lot, they also did a lot of borrowing, and they invested the borrowing into the business. And since they were investing the savings into their businesses, a lot of them reported that their income grew, and then their capital for the business also grew, and they were able to use the excess money, the profits that they had to take care of some of the immediate needs of the family, like food, school fees, and other medical bills and other bills that they had. So with the implementation, we also had some challenges, and one of the challenges was that we had people that dropped out. So the people that dropped out gave us an opportunity for us to see what are some of the challenges of implementing a digital platform with the traders. So we had 12 people that had dropped out, and they told us that they had to drop out because they had poor network, so the connectivity to internet was very bad, so they couldn't participate. Some of them reported that the app itself was giving them problems, they couldn't log in. Others indicated that there was lack of digital literacy on their part. So they didn't know what to do with the app and the information that it was providing. And then others indicated that they didn't have the smartphones that was required for the app to work optimally. So because of that, we were able to then know that the participants did appreciate the use of the Village Savers app, because it changed, first of all, the way they did the savings. It changed the way they borrowed for their capital, but then it also improved their businesses. The other interesting thing that we came across was the fact that it proved that if you do digitization, this process leads to formalization. So when the data for the Village Savers app was shared during the one of the partnership meetings that we did, we then had interest from one of the private banks, the Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank, who said that they were going to use the credit record that the Village Savers app was able to generate for them to accept loan application. So that was one of a service that, a new financial service available to the traders because of the digitalization that happened through the Village Savers account. But then also, following the implementation of the pilot and also the interaction with the traders, 21 of the 75 traders, they were able to then open bank accounts with the Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank. So now they not only have the mobile money accounts, they also have the accounts within the formal banking system, and that then gives them an opportunity to have access to other financial services offered by the bank. The other formalization that happened after the pilot was the National Pensions Scheme Authority that was also interested in using the results coming from the Village Savers records for them to provide pension saving plans for the traders. So that's another financial service that came up as a result of the pilot. So what are some of the recommendations then that we were able to draw from there? The first one is that there is need to build partnerships between government and the private sector to ensure that there is sufficient support for uptake of digital services that support financial inclusion, not just for the elite, but also for the informal sector. And then there was need to provide digital infrastructure so that there is proper connectivity and people can then use the platforms. Because without connectivity, the digital platforms was useless in that sense. And then also there is need for government and stakeholders to provide a secure and resilient network so that there is protection of people from scammers and cyber attacks. And if people are able to have confidence in the platforms, it's easier for them to take up those services and use the platforms. But then also, there was need to, bridge the digital divide. There was a lot of training that was done for, the traders to get to a point where they were able to use the data. So if that training is provided and people are able to know how to use digital information, it becomes easier for digital products to be provided, but then also for the people to use the digital services that are being provided to them. Thank you, and over.
Thank you so much, Rosaline. We'll hand it over to Tong to share his work, and I am also putting a link to the DFI R&D agenda in the chat for those of you who are interested. Tong, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Just one moment. I'm going to share the presentation. Okay, are you able to see the presentation?
Not yet. We see you, but we don't see the presentation.
Sorry, apologies. Okay, I think you should be able to see it now, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay, well, I am going to be taking you through today about the South Sudan's experience with traditional meets digital, the Sudan Sanduk Savings Scheme. So this came about from an innovation challenge that was brought up by the African Borderlands Center. And the challenge was, how do we improve the livelihoods of informal cross-border traders and their communities? So for us, we looked at one of the biggest challenges in the borderlands, especially to do around trade and cross-border trade, is around access to finance and how to actually make transactions across the borders. So I'll give you a little bit of the background as well as the innovation context. I'll be talking to you a bit about the communities that we visited, some of the initiatives that we actually tried and piloted in the area, and then also the learnings and findings that came out from our pilot. So I'm going to begin first with a short video that I want to show you.
We can't hear.
Tong, I don't know if the video has sound, but if it does, we can't hear the sound.
Oh, I'm very sorry. It did have sound. I apologize. Why it's not coming through. But anyways, I think I'll just continue with the presentation then, since you're not able to hear the actual video. But it was basically some of our experiences when we went onto the ground. We went to two places within the borderland regions between Sudan and South Sudan. The first one was a place called Amiet Market, which is based in Abyei. And for those that don't really know much of the context of Sudan and South Sudan, Abyei is currently a disputed area. South Sudan gained independence from Sudan in 2011, and that was one of the hotspots that was never actually resolved. So we decided to try and see whether our initiative would work there, hoping to be able to improve cross-border trade within IBA. And then the second place was another place in northern Barghazal, called Warawat, which is a peace market between Sudan and South Sudan. So I'll give you a little bit now about the background and the context. So South Sudan and Sudanese women traders, due out of a necessity and the spirit of self-reliance that they have within them, um, the majority of them are owning their own small holding businesses. So small things like tea shops, small restaurants. They may not necessarily be cross-border traders, but they support the whole ecosystem around it. So those traders that travel from Sudan and they have to come into South Sudan across the border, will find that the majority of the women within the borderland regions are actually involved in commerce to support the general cross-border trade. Okay. And then so they use these businesses to support as a supplementary towards their household income. Uh, one of the major challenges that these women have actually been facing is not that their businesses aren't generating revenue, is that because of the remoteness of the locations, access to finance is a challenge. There's no banking infrastructure within these spaces because they're quite remote, so you won't find any of the national banks there. So these women, as well as the cross-border traders within those areas, have resorted to something which is called the Sanduk. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what it is. It's a traditional savings scheme. So, okay, the Sanduk, what it is a penny box. It's a Sanduk in Arabic means it's a metal box. Okay, so what happens is the community will come together and pool their resources. So each week you may find each member of the Sanduk would put in, say it could be £100 into the pool funds. So you have, say, 10 members. 10 members will put £100 each into the box 1 week. That means that there's 1,000 which is in there now. Now the following week, again, they would also deposit again another 100. Now from this, the members of the Sanduk have access to be able to, every week it will rotate amongst them, and they would give the certain amount of money to one of the members. Now also that same Sanduk, each community member of it can be able to access loans from that pooled funds, and they will pay at a certain interest rate. And then what you'll find is that the funds which are stored will grow with time. And then after, say, a period of 6 months, they will then open it up and then be able to share whatever the profit is, as well as the initial capital that was put into it. So this system has helped women across both of the countries to be able to plan their savings, helps them to raise capital, sometimes at an interest-free rate. The initiative was also economically and socially empowering towards those vulnerable women and those communities which find themselves excluded because of the distance from the commercial centers. We also found that the Sanduk, it helps the underserved as well as the under-resourced. And then this initiative, we also had hoped would be able to build the confidence and self-esteem of the local indigenous communities via us actually celebrating, honoring, and recognizing their pre-existing local practices. So it wasn't us coming there with an idea. We actually went there and we took a pre-existing scheme that the people were using to save as well as to access finance within their own local communities. So, all right, when we got on the ground, we did a community immersion mission. The first thing was to try and understand what actually is happening, not to go with a preconceived idea. And then we found that the traders had a separate style of what a sanduk was used for. For the big traders, mainly the main goals was about savings. It was also about money safety because you would find in those areas there's no banking infrastructure. So instead, they would pool their funds together in one secure place, have the big metal box, and then access to it is also controlled with three padlocks where you've got a treasurer, you've got the chairman, and then you've also got the secretary, who all three of them are the only people that can be able to access the funds, and they all have to be in agreement as well as the group agreeing that, okay, these loans will be given, or this is the period in the week where they deposit the funds. Then now the women groups, as well as the other cross-border traders, for them, they primarily would use the Sanduk as a way to save money. Also access to finance, say if they want to grow their business, they could be able to take loans from those pooled savings. We also found that a lot of the community would use the Sanduk funds for emergencies if somebody is sick or maybe there's a shortage for school fees. And then another thing is that whenever they're venturing into business, the Sanduk was a primary chance for them to get their initial business capital. So within the co-creation phase, it allowed us to have deep connection with the border women and the cooperatives that existed. It allowed us to observe and as well as to curate what their primary interests were. And we found that access to finance was one of uh, their main interests in the Sanduk, as well as now it allowed us to be able to access knowledge and to gain a sharpened idea and ensure community ownership within this innovation that we were coming to test. So when we talk of the digitization of the Sanduk, um, what our theory of change was that these communities currently are operating in an informal way. They have a scheme where they're able to save money. They document them. They have ledger books there where they're able to show that every week this is the amount of money they have saved. They offer loans amongst themselves, and the loans are actually able to be repaid. But the only challenge that they have is that they can't be able to access the formal financial markets. So what we aimed through digitization of this traditional Sanduk was first to strengthen the durable connections among the populations in business/income generating activities across the Sudan-South Sudan border. We also wanted to highlight a model for financial service providers to now be able to achieve buy-in via grassroots savings cooperatives. We also aim to enhance the digital infrastructures within those locations and to be able to help those communities and groups to access digital finance as well as to boost cross-border trade. Um, we also found that one of the challenges was safety and security of funds in those remote areas. So allow for safe cash disbursement of funds, also utilizing current pre-existing networks of mobile money agents. We also wanted to allow for safe storage, as I said, of pooled funds to also improve cooperative outcomes. We wanted to help these women as well as youth saving cooperatives to build on the strength of the current Sanduk frameworks, and now to be able to help to integrate the saving and credit co-op SACCOs into actual frameworks. We also wanted to gain financial inclusion of these unbanked women and also these organic credit union saving cooperatives through the aim of gaining them access to more microfinance. So our experiment design, as I said, we first went through a phase of co-creation. Co-creation was done by us, by the local community. There was us as the accelerator lab coming on the ground. And then we also brought in Mgarouche, which is the first mobile money service provider within South Sudan. And we brought them in actually at the start of this experiment and the pilot so that they would be going through the whole process with us. So we designed this whole pilot, this whole experiment with the community, involving them from the ground up, and as well as that, having the private sector engagement from the beginning. Why this scheme actually hadn't existed before in South Sudan, a digital version of the Sanduk, we found was that not that there wasn't a interest from mobile money service providers, but the challenge is that these places are so remote, and then these communities, that for the mobile money service providers to be able to access them, it was a challenge for them. They didn't see what the business case was for it. But by us coming in and then working and doing the research and development, and piloting this hand in hand with the community as well as the mobile money service provider, it allowed us to help shed almost the risk for the mobile money service provider, but also allowed us to capitalize and gain with the network that they have, which is almost 1.7 million people across the country. So when we were designing the experiment, as I said, this was done hand in hand with the private sector, our private sector partner, Mgurush, as well as the local community within the borderland regions. And then we were able, through this research and the pilot and the gathering of data throughout the stages, to actually be able to generate learnings from it. So when we were actually doing the experiment, we had 6 groups of 6 Sanduk groups. We took 3 of the Sanduk groups and we actually went through a process of digitizing their processes. Um, we did this by working hand in hand with Mgurush and Trinity Technologies to be able to design a system which would mimic the actual analog version of the Sanduk that they were operating. And the 3 groups that we used was Okuchimat. There was another group called Town Group and Apormo indeed. And then the other 3 groups, they actually continued to use the traditional way of Sanduk, which was analog using paper. But then for these 3 groups, we were able to digitize them. And the idea was to have to be able to see whether there actually really was a difference if we were to digitize, what the benefits would be for the group. So we used it as a kind of control group. 3 of them would be control groups. So Mgurush was working hand in hand with us. Mgurush has a subsidiary called Trinity Technologies, who were the ones developing this digital version of the Sanduk. They also came with us on the ground, and then we went through all the different flow charts of how the community would actually operates the Sanduk, whether it comes to depositing funds, whether it comes to what are the processes for them offering loans, who actually releases the funds. So what we would find is that there will be 3 people who have access to the Sanduk metal box. So that means that it's like a 3-stage verification before funds can be released. So all of that was actually now codified, and Mgurush were able to develop onto their platform a digital version of what the Sanduk did on paper. Okay, we also had the Mgurush customer service agents who provided support, helped us to register these groups, individuals onto the platform. And then what we found throughout it is we had altogether a total of 65 in the pilot scheme, and they had deposited £103,700 by then. And then the amount transacted was 58,200, withdrawal of 50. They had bought also airtime. Okay, 1 second, sorry. Okay, let me just go to the next slide. Okay, so some of the key insights that we found, literacy levels in the community were very low. So we had to do a form of, we had to provide them with digital literacy training. We had to provide them also with financial literacy trainings. We had to also provide them with 2G GSM phones to be able to use this. And then the majority of the participants that we had were small scale traders. We found within Warwa, most of the Sanduks, the capital came from farming activities. Majority traders, 65% of them would borrow from the Sanduk. We also found the frequency of savings had significantly changed throughout the experiment. The majority of Sanduk groups at least 3/4 of them were involved in income generating activities, and they were able to loan with interest rental assets. We also saw an increase in access to internet access within the community and digital money transfer. We also saw that the community took real ownership of this innovation. And we also found, which was the biggest thing, that the interest rates within those groups at the beginning was a high 30%, but was able to drop to 20% after we did the digitization. And then one of our biggest achievements that we found was after the successful pilot, mGurush were able to develop onto their platform an application called digital called M Sanduk, which now exists on their platform and is open to all of their 1.7 million customers to use across the country. So some barriers that we faced, it was difficult to enroll the 131 participants because you need to have documents like ID cards, and we found that a lot of them, because of the remote locations, they weren't necessarily they didn't have those ID documents. We also found that there were climate-related issues, flooding, which affected transportation in the areas. More than knowledge, we also found that, for them to be able to participate, some people will feel like they need to be incentivized to try and test this out. Digital literacy was a big challenge, and then there was a consistent lack of availability of funds, especially around the agents within the area. And yeah, that's it. So thank you very much for listening to the presentation, and I'll pass you back to Tayo. Over.
Thank you so much, Tong, and thank you to Rosaline as well. If there are any questions, please feel free to open your mic and pose your question in the last few minutes of the discussion. No need to raise your hand. You can just jump in. And maybe while we're waiting, I will pose one question to both Tong and Rosaline, but if someone thinks of a question, feel free to interrupt. So I think one thing that stood out to me in both examples is the way in which somehow technology was used to approximate or improve trust, which is a little bit counterintuitive, right? Because these groups are built on community-based social trust, and you would imagine that technology might have a hard time basically baking that in, but somehow it's worked. So to both of you, what do you think enabled technology in these cases to improve or approximate trust?
Yeah, Tayo, I think for me, what I found was the fact that we brought in the community from the beginning of the pilot, that we did the co-creation with them, that this wasn't us coming with a solution to them. It was us actually taking their own solution and working with them and kind of bringing them together with the mobile money service provider to be able to digitize their system or their way of community saving. So I think they had buy-in from the beginning. And from there, when they saw also the benefits, like them keeping money on their phone means that when they go home, that somebody isn't going to take it from them, or they don't have to fear because they're holding physical cash. And those benefits far outweighed any risk that they thought they would come from this process. So
That makes a lot of sense. Co-creation from the beginning kind of generates a sense of ownership and maybe lowers the barriers to participation. Rosaline, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I do agree with what Tong has said. It was also the case for Zambia, the issue of co-creation. But then also, I think the issue of transparency of the way the information was kept on the platform gave it a little bit more legitimacy, which then was a little bit more attractive to the participants in the pilot. So that kind of transparency was something that was something that was a major contributor to it.
Thank you. I see two hands, Valeria and then Jacqueline.
Valeria, do you want me to go ahead? Oh, okay.
Sorry, yes. It's you can hear me, right?
Yes, we hear you.
Well, I am Valeria Valencia. I am from UNDP, Peru. Sorry for my English, but well, I led an initiative that is called Innova tu Mercado that we promote also digital transformations within the traders of the market. Here we have something special like Tom mentioned about the small business, where the majority of the merchants and the traders are women also, but adult persons. So we have like this strategy to digitize these persons with the younger volunteers that we call the amigos, and these young volunteers go to the mercados, go to the markets and teach them how to use digital tools, like for example Zoom, this platform, because all the courses and digital literacy courses that we have is in the Zoom and also WhatsApp, but also to have like, for example, use WhatsApp Business to promote their own catalog, to show their products. Something that I think that I related very much about what Tom said, it's about the communities, because the power of that they have, because we only have like this approach, but they create the solution, right? So I think that it's very important to mention that about the communities also. And I think that since my experience, the educational and financial educational is something that is really, really important here, because they only think about sales. They use digital wallet that we call here, that is Yape. It's about from a bank to the private sector. But I also want to create something like about Tanduk, but here we call juntas. That is like a small group that organize to save money, and for each fund they give the money to the person that is on the list. So I want to thank both of you. And I will also show about what Peru is doing about digital transformation in the community. So if you can send me your email to have like a meeting, and we can also talk to each other. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Valeria. We are out of time, but I want to allow one more person to pose a question. If Matea, if you could put your question in the chat or send me an email, I'd be happy to forward it to the relevant speaker. Jacqueline, if you could jump in the last minute or so here.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Tayo, for organizing this, and for Tong and Roselyn. Your stories were very compelling, especially because I'm currently putting, as part of the large project development facility, together with Timbuktu and the Chief Digital Office and the Resilience Hub, we put together a proposal that did get funding in order to put together like a DPI, to exactly resolve or address the kind of challenges you've mentioned. So it was really, really interesting to hear what were the lessons learned and the challenges. I'm going to put one of the questions in the chat, because that one you can always get back, because we've been facing some challenges around engaging with private sector. But then the second one is, if you were to look at this and see what type of maybe regional approach could be taken to allow the sort of data exchange and data interoperability and also digitization of records in order to provide access and financial inclusion to those in such low resource areas, rural areas. If you could provide recommendations to such a platform or for such a platform, what would they be? You know what I mean? So that you're there creating this great platform in Sudan, Rosalind, you're there creating this great platform in Zambia. What if we could bring a regional focus, pull in the AU, say, look, why don't we just build rails? That's what a DPI is, isn't it? Building rails to allow all countries to have the benefit on it and make it more a PPP that doesn't benefit one particular country or one particular private sector. Maybe that's a long answer. And in which case, if it is just, you can also write a mail. We can have maybe a side chat later. But thanks again. Really great platform.
Thank you, Jacqueline. A quick response from either Tong or Rosalind before we wrap this up.
Yeah, just to answer to Jacqueline, we had been looking into creating a digital I think I forgot the word of it now.
Public
But
interest.
DPG.
Yeah.
Yes, a DPG. Yes. And we've been working also with some other UNDP country officers who've been interested in this. And we put together like a list of the different concept notes we use for the community immersion mission, the co-creation, all the different documentation. And going forward, what we would wish, even though MGRUSH was the one that developed the code, is to at least the process that we use to codify that traditional form of savings is there. So it's not necessarily that it's in C or in Java or something like that, but how did we actually map out that whole process? So that is there and we're willing to share it. And definitely, Jacqueline, if you reach out, we will be more than happy to share all of the research that we have gathered up to this point. Over.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Tong. Thank you for the wonderful questions. Thank you to our brilliant colleagues, Tong and Rosalind, and to our equally brilliant colleagues at the COP for organizing this session. For those of you who are at the end of your day, I hope you have a great evening. For those of you who have a day ahead, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining.